I'd like to firstly welcome this bill for our Labour Party group leader, Senator Ivana Bacik, who I believe has now introduced and passed more legislation than any other senator, which is a record to be extremely proud of. This bill is fundamentally practical, useful and timely as we begin to emerge from the strangeness of time for the organisation of working time for the entire country under COVID-19. I think it's prime time in which to discuss how we structure our working lives, and that it needs to interact in a flexible and ultimately understanding way with our own lives. For women, that is a particularly unique intersection because our bodies go through a very wide range of reproductive experiences, from periods and pregnancy to endometriosis to miscarriage, abortion, perimenopause, full-blown menopause, and over the course of our lives we will take long-term medication to manage both our reproductive cycle and the hormonal and pain management that comes with that, and it's a real hoot, let me tell you. I think that it's something that we don't always acknowledge enough when we are talking about women in work, which is that there's a physical pain as a result of simply having an internal organ lining which shed its internal once a month, and it's pretty sore and it's actually quite inconvenient. But it's very normal for there to be physical pain and fatigue associated with every one of the events I mentioned above, all for which people are expected to bear while working and smiling and getting on with it and mothering and managing and scheduling and doing up to 70% of the domestic work in any given family home. So in short, it isn't easy being a working woman, it isn't easy being a working trans woman, it isn't easy working with the Oireachtas at all, if I'm perfectly frank about the whole situation. And this legislation, as posed by Senator Bacik, is about helping to ensure dignity, care and compassion is exercised by anyone who may find themselves in need in time off from work to manage physical, psychological and the emotional impact of miscarriage or IVF. At this moment, I'm also thinking of some of my young friends who, due to various complications, have had to have a hysterectomy, sometimes in their early 20s, and they too have faced a number of reproductive complications and have had to actually leave this country in order to get the life-saving and life-changing surgery that they needed. So I know while this bill is specifically about reproductive leave, I suppose I want to just flag that let us not forget that reproductive complication goes actually quite a bit far further than what we've really been talking most commonly in here today about. And I suppose let's remind ourselves that a lot of the discussions we've had here today are far and away more common than occurrences than you would think based on how little we talk or are encouraged to talk about them. I know the stats have been given out before, 1 in 4 pregnancies will end in miscarriage, 1 in 5 couples will experience fertility issues, and I'm aware that we are rattling off these stats, but that for many people, some of whom in this room have very lived experiences of these, and I hope that this proposed legislation today gives some of those people comfort and optimism that we are going to go in the right direction in this country in dealing with this issue. The vast majority of people will be in work actually while they experience a lot of these things. So it's almost comical that in 2021 we don't have standard leave applicable for nearly 50% of working people for when they need it in relation to pregnancy loss or accessing fertility treatments. We also don't have standard work practice policies in most places for periods or for menopause or for endometriosis, and these are a normal part of women's lives which cost us money and time, both emotional and physical, and are simply not talked about in the place where we spend more hours a week than we do sometimes with our family or in our own homes, and these are all places where this all goes unspoken about. The legislation not only addresses the very practical provision of leave for those who need it, it opens up the space and the workplaces and our radio studios to this conversation that we have been avoiding for a very long time, which is that women's reproductive lives are simply not the same as men. Our bodies have this rather tedious reproductive fertility system ticking away, and that we have to manage that and factor it into our everyday lives, mostly with little or no support. And I'm acutely aware of, as Senator Éireann said, that not everyone wants to be able to discuss this, and I'm acutely aware that there may be people listening today or people in this room for whom this is a deeply personal conversation. And as I said, I hope that whatever way people find to deal with these things, that they will take some comfort in the fact that there is a piece of legislation being brought forward that will make things better for other people going after them, and that we are going to do the right thing. The loss of a pregnancy is an incredibly difficult thing to go through, and I've failed at this point to mention, and I should add, that it's not only difficult for those who experience a pregnancy loss, but also for their partners. There are also extraordinarily added complications for a trans person who experiences pregnancy loss or fertility issues. And in 2021, it is time that we have these difficult conversations and recognise that very often the people we walk past in the corridor or share an office cubicle with, although we haven't really been sharing an office in the past year, may be silently suffering, and our current work practices are compounding their anguish. So let's get this bill passed. And it has been said already, this bill is about workers' rights, and as a trade unionist, I'm proud once again to be part of a party in the Seanad that is consistently putting forward legislation on workers' rights. I want to thank the many people who have reached out to me with their deeply personal stories, and I think everyone in this room has probably had someone reach out to them in advance of this debate. And I want to thank those who have shared today, and particularly Senator Mary Siri Carney for your honesty and your frankness. And again, I want to commend my colleague, friend and comrade, Senator Annie Hoey, for once again leading the legislative charge and bringing forth this timely, necessary and important piece of legislation.